There are moments in life that arrive quietly, yet change everything without warning. No loud arguments, no dramatic scenes, no obvious signals, just a single inner shift, like a light switching on inside a dark room. Last night your soulmate discovered something about you. Not something spoken out loud or written anywhere, but something felt deeply beneath the surface of appearances. And whether you notice it yet or not, something has already started to change between you. Some psychologists suggest that deep human connection does not begin with words alone. It begins in the unseen layers of the mind, where intuition moves faster than logic. People carry hidden parts of themselves, the version they show, the version they protect, and the version they do not fully understand yet. Real connection happens when someone suddenly recognizes what is real beneath all of it, and that is what may have happened. A quiet truth surfaced, not about perfection, but about depth. Maybe they realized your strength was shaped by what you survived, that your kindness was not random but earned through struggle, that your silence was never emptiness, but a space filled with meaning. People often misread what they can see, but the deeper mind always senses more than words. Relationships act like mirrors in subtle ways. They do not only show who we are, but also what we are becoming. And when someone close to your soul sees a deeper truth about you, they are also changed by it. Something shifts in them too. Stay with this because it gets even deeper than it looks. Many people move through life wearing emotional layers, adapting to roles, building masks without even realizing it. These layers help us survive, help us belong, help us avoid being misunderstood. But beneath every layer is something real, a quieter self, a truer presence. And in rare connections, someone finally sees through the surface. Your soulmate may have had that moment. They did not just see behavior, they felt presence. Maybe they realized your silence was never distance but reflection, that your calmness was not emotional coldness, but self-control shaped by experience, that your independence was not rejection, but quiet strength built over time. What looked simple on the outside carried complexity underneath, and once the mind sees that kind of truth, it cannot fully unsee it. The inner image changes permanently. They may have also noticed the things you never said, the effort you never advertised, the battles you handled alone, the emotions you learned to hold without breaking. And suddenly, what once seemed ordinary becomes something rare, something unforgettable. This is where perception begins to shift. And if you're still here, pay attention, because this is where the real transformation starts. Because once someone sees you differently at that depth, they do not go back to the old version they once imagined. Something inside them reorganizes quietly. They may not even express it immediately, but their emotional awareness has already changed. A new respect forms. A deeper curiosity grows, a sense that what they thought they understood was only the surface. This kind of realization does not always create immediate action. It begins silently, like a slow emotional awakening, and sometimes that is more powerful than words or decisions. It alters how they feel, how they remember you, how they respond to you moving forward. Nothing outside may look different at first, but internally, everything is moving. And the deeper truth is this: people are not transformed by grand events alone. They are transformed when they finally see someone clearly for the first time. Last night may have been one of those moments. A shift from assumption to awareness, from surface to truth, from illusion to recognition. And when that happens, nothing stays exactly the same again. You won't believe what slowly unfolds after this kind of realization, because it often begins in silence long before it ever becomes visible. Last night your soulmate may have uncovered something about you that was never actually new, only unseen until now. It was always there, quietly present in your behavior, your silence, your choices, your energy. But awareness finally touched it, and that changes everything. Many people assume relationships deepen simply with time, yet the deeper view suggests something different. Time alone does not create intimacy. Awareness does. Two people can share years of interaction, and still remain strangers to each other's inner world. Then a single moment of real understanding arrives, and everything feels different, not because someone transformed overnight, but because perception finally shifted. Perhaps your soulmate saw that your strength was never about being untouched by life. They realized it was built through experience, that your calm presence was not emptiness, but emotional balance earned through struggle, that your silence carried meaning instead of absence, and your patience was not weakness, but control shaped by lived reality. Quiet people are often misunderstood in this way. Silence gets mistaken for distance, when in truth, it can hold the deepest form of expression. Stay with this, because what happens next changes the whole meaning of connection. There is a concept that every person carries different layers of identity. The version shown to the world, the version protected from others, and the version even the person themselves may not fully understand. These layers help us function in life. They help us fit in, survive emotionally, and avoid unnecessary exposure. But in rare connections, someone begins to see beyond those layers. Your soulmate may have reached that point. They did not just observe your behavior, they felt your presence. Maybe they understood that your quiet moments were never emptiness but reflection, that your restraint was not emotional distance but discipline, formed through experience, that your calmness was not lack of feeling, but the ability to carry feeling without losing control. What seemed simple on the surface carried depth underneath. And once the mind recognizes that depth, it does not return to its previous assumptions easily. The internal image of a person begins to shift. They may also start remembering things they once overlooked. The effort you never announced, the struggles you never displayed, the emotional weight you handled privately, and suddenly what looked ordinary begins to feel rare. That is where perception quietly transforms. Because once someone truly sees you at that level, they cannot fully return to who they thought you were before. Something in them changes, even if nothing is said out loud. A deeper respect begins forming. A new curiosity grows. They start paying attention differently, noticing details that once seemed invisible. This kind of realization does not always lead to immediate action. It unfolds slowly, like an internal shift that takes time to settle. But its effect is powerful. It changes how they interpret your actions, how they remember your words, how they feel in your presence. And here is the part most people miss. Human beings are not only changed by events, they are changed by understanding. The moment meaning enters perception, everything reorganizes quietly. Last night may have been exactly that kind of moment. Not dramatic, not loud, not visible from the outside, but deeply transformative within. A shift from assumption to recognition, from surface to depth, from illusion to clarity. And once that shift happens, nothing stays emotionally identical again. Something new has already begun, even if it has not yet shown itself in the real world. Becoming whole, in the deepest sense, is about seeing ourselves clearly, without distortion. And sometimes that clarity does not arrive alone. It comes through another person acting like a mirror, reflecting what we could not fully recognize within ourselves. Last night, your soulmate may have looked at you, and without expecting it, seen not just you, but also something within themselves. There is a long-standing idea that one of the greatest human struggles is the gap between who we truly are and who we believe we must become to be accepted. From early life, people learn to adapt. They build versions of themselves that feel safer in the world. They become more controlled, more impressive, more careful with emotions, or more socially acceptable, because they believe love and respect depend on those traits. Over time, these versions can become so strong that the original self feels distant. But true change begins when a person stops performing wholeness and starts living truthfully. And maybe that is where everything quietly shifted last night. Something about you may have appeared differently in their awareness. Not because you changed, but because they finally saw more clearly. They may have realized that your strength was never built on perfection or image. It was built on honesty with yourself. In a world where many people carefully shape how they appear, authenticity stands out without trying to. Most individuals present edited versions of who they are. Confidence is shown, while insecurity is hidden. Success is displayed, while struggle is kept private. Many do this out of fear that being fully seen might lead to rejection. But deeper understanding suggests something different. Becoming whole does not mean becoming flawless. It means becoming real. Perhaps your soulmate noticed that you were not trying to impress or perform. You were simply being yourself, shaped by experience rather than image. You moved through life without turning every moment into a display. You carried lessons quietly, without needing applause, and that realization may have changed how they interpret everything about you. Authenticity often creates confusion at first. People who are real are sometimes misunderstood because they do not fit predictable patterns. Silence gets labeled as distance. Depth gets mistaken for mystery. Calmness gets mistaken for lack of emotion. But over time, authenticity reveals a strength that cannot be imitated. Your soulmate may have come to see that your honesty carried more weight than perfection ever could, that your calm presence created a sense of trust without needing explanation, that your imperfections did not reduce your value, but instead made you more human and believable. There is a stage in awareness where perception stops being superficial. Jung explored the idea of inner development, where a person slowly becomes aligned with their true self, rather than the identity shaped by expectations. This path is not easy, because it requires facing uncomfortable truths and releasing the need for constant approval. Many avoid this journey, but when someone encounters a person who already lives with that level of authenticity, something inside them begins to shift. They feel less pressure to perform. They feel permission to be real. And that feeling alone can change the entire dynamic between two people. Maybe last night, your soulmate experienced exactly that. Around you they may have felt something different. Less pressure, less performance, less need to hide parts of themselves. Instead, a quiet sense of being accepted as they are. That realization does not always come with words. It arrives internally, slowly, like understanding forming in layers. And once it appears, relationships begin to feel different. Because perfection always creates distance, it makes connection feel conditional, like something that must be earned. But authenticity removes that distance. It creates space where people do not have to pretend. And perhaps the most important discovery they made was not about your strengths alone, but about your honesty in carrying both strength and imperfection, without hiding either. That kind of presence does not demand attention. It simply exists, and in doing so it changes how others feel about themselves. You might not see the impact immediately, but something has already begun to shift beneath the surface, and it tends to grow quietly before it ever becomes visible. Deep transformation rarely announces itself. It does not always arrive with dramatic words or visible turning points. More often it begins in silence, in the background of awareness, where thoughts slowly reorganize themselves. Last night may have been one of those subtle moments. Nothing dramatic may have happened outwardly, yet something internal began to move. The mind does not always register change immediately. Instead, it builds understanding gradually, piece by piece, until a new perception becomes unavoidable. People often think change should feel sudden, but real psychological shifts are usually quiet. They begin beneath awareness long before they are recognized. And sometimes a single realization is enough to reshape how someone sees another person entirely. Your soulmate may have been carrying assumptions about you without even knowing it. As time passes, we often create internal images of others based on fragments, interpretations, and expectations. We think we are seeing the person, but often we are seeing our version of them. But when genuine connection deepens, those projections begin to dissolve. Reality slowly replaces assumption, and in that moment, something important can surface. Maybe they finally understood that your calmness was not absence of feeling, but emotional balance. That your silence was not emptiness but depth. That your consistency was not ordinary, but rare. And once that kind of awareness enters a connection, nothing remains exactly the same. Even if nothing is said, everything inside begins to move differently. First comes recognition, then reflection, then acceptance, and only later does action follow. What changes inside a person today may not show on the outside until much later. That is why silence should never be ignored or underestimated. Silence is where meaning settles itself. It is where emotions stop rushing and start becoming clear. It is where truth no longer competes with distraction or noise. Last night may have started a quiet shift inside your soulmate's inner world. They may now be recalling small details they once passed over without thought. Old conversations might feel different in their memory. Moments that once felt ordinary may now carry unexpected weight. They may be realizing that your presence affected them more deeply than they ever allowed themselves to admit. Deep understanding often does not arrive loudly. It builds slowly, in layers, until something inside finally clicks. Stay with this, because this is where the real shift begins. There is a natural order to inner change. First awareness appears, then reflection begins, then acceptance slowly forms, and only after that does visible action take shape. This means the most important transformations often remain invisible at the beginning. People think nothing is happening, but internally, everything is reorganizing. Silence plays a powerful role in this process. It gives space for thoughts to settle and emotions to be understood without interruption. Last night may have created exactly that kind of silent movement within your soulmate's mind. They may be reinterpreting things they once dismissed. Moments that felt unimportant before may now feel meaningful. Words they once heard casually may now carry emotional weight. They may be noticing patterns they previously ignored. This is not sudden change. It is gradual awakening. A slow unfolding of awareness that builds quietly until it can no longer be ignored. And when that happens, perception itself begins to shift. Understanding does not always arrive in the present moment. Sometimes it forms through memory. A person starts looking back differently. They begin to see their past interactions in a new light. And once memory changes, emotion follows. Your soulmate may be experiencing exactly that kind of internal rearrangement. They are not reacting to something new. They are finally recognizing something that was always there, but never fully seen. That is the subtle power of awareness. It does not add something foreign. It reveals what already existed beneath the surface. And once revealed, it cannot be fully unseen again. The mind may try to return to old patterns, but something has already shifted internally. Even if everything outside appears unchanged, something inside has already moved forward. Conversations may continue, routines may remain the same, but interpretation is no longer identical. Meaning has changed, and meaning changes everything. There is a deeper truth in how transformation actually works. It rarely begins with action. It begins with recognition. Then reflection follows. Then acceptance slowly settles in. And eventually, behavior starts to shift naturally without force. This is why many of the most important changes in life are invisible at first. They happen beneath awareness, where thoughts are reorganizing quietly. Your soulmate may not even realize yet that they are changing, but they are. Old assumptions may be weakening. New understanding may be forming in their place, and slowly a different emotional perspective begins to grow. This is how real inner movement happens. Quiet, gradual, almost unnoticeable at first, but deeply powerful over time. And if you're still listening, this is the part most people miss completely. Because in the end, silence is not emptiness. It is processing. It is where the mind sorts truth from assumption. Last night may have created a moment like that inside them. Not a loud realization, but a quiet recognition that begins to echo internally. Jung once explored the idea that the unconscious mind speaks first through feeling, not logic. Meaning arrives before explanation. That is why someone can suddenly feel differently about a person without being able to explain why. Something inside them has already understood before the conscious mind catches up. And once that understanding begins, it spreads slowly through thought, memory, and emotion. Nothing may look different yet, but everything is already in motion beneath the surface. And sometimes that unseen movement becomes the beginning of an entirely new chapter, one that no one fully notices until it has already changed everything. First comes recognition, then reflection, then acceptance, and only after that does action slowly appear in the outer world. This means the shift happening inside someone today may stay invisible for a long time before it ever shows on the surface. That is exactly why silence should never be underestimated. Silence is not empty space. It is where meaning settles, where emotions stop rushing and start forming clarity. It is where truth is no longer fighting noise, distraction, or confusion. Last night may have created a quiet internal movement inside your soulmate's mind. They may now be remembering small details they once ignored without importance. Old conversations may not feel the same anymore. Moments that once seemed normal may suddenly feel meaningful in a deeper way. They may be realizing that your presence influenced them far more than they ever admitted to themselves. Real understanding rarely comes in loud moments. It arrives slowly, layer by layer, until something inside finally clicks into place. And if you're still here, what comes next will change how you see everything about connection. There is a natural sequence to inner transformation. First, awareness appears like a small spark. Then reflection begins, as the mind replays moments again and again. After that comes acceptance, when resistance starts to fade, and only then does visible action begin to form in real life. This is why some of the biggest changes in a person remain invisible at first. On the outside, everything looks normal. Life continues, conversations continue, routines stay the same. But inside, everything is reorganizing quietly. Silence plays a powerful role in this process, because it gives space for thoughts to settle without interruption. Last night may have triggered exactly this kind of silent shift within your soulmate. They may be reinterpreting things they once ignored. Words that once felt ordinary may now carry emotional weight. Moments that seemed unimportant may now feel significant. They are not changing suddenly. They are slowly awakening to something that was always there but never fully seen. Understanding does not always begin in the present moment. Sometimes it starts through memory, as the mind begins to revisit the past with new awareness. Your soulmate may now be looking back differently at everything you shared. They are not reacting to something new. They are finally seeing something that existed all along but was never fully recognized. That is how awareness works. It does not create something new from nothing. It reveals what was already present beneath the surface. And once something is seen clearly, it cannot be unseen in the same way again. Even if nothing outside changes, something inside already has. Conversations may still happen normally, routines may continue, but interpretation is no longer the same. Meaning has shifted, and when meaning shifts, perception shifts with it. That is where quiet transformation begins, not in action, but in awareness. This is the part most people never notice. Real change rarely starts with behavior. It starts with recognition, then reflection follows, then acceptance slowly forms, and only after that does external action begin to show. That is why inner transformation often goes unnoticed for a long time. Your soulmate may not even realize yet that they are changing internally, but they are. Old assumptions may be weakening. New understanding may be forming quietly in their place. A different emotional perspective may already be developing beneath awareness. It is slow, almost unnoticeable, but powerful over time. This is how real inner movement works. Not sudden, not loud, but steady and deep. And if you are paying attention, this is the moment where everything begins to shift beneath the surface. Because silence is never just silence. It is processing. It is the mind sorting truth from assumption, reality from interpretation. Last night may have created such a moment inside them. Not a dramatic realization, but a quiet recognition that continues to echo internally. The mind often understands emotionally before it understands logically. Feelings arrive before explanations. That is why someone can suddenly feel different about another person without being able to explain why. Something within them has already recognized the truth before words can catch up. And once that recognition begins, it spreads through memory, thought, and emotion. Nothing may appear changed yet on the outside, but everything is already moving underneath. And sometimes this invisible movement becomes the beginning of a completely new direction in a relationship, one that unfolds slowly, silently, and then all at once when it finally becomes visible.